code is, because the other side of it's portable. They show me this, where it's guest requests. Oh yeah, he should, we've got it in several different copies, so you've got it like with that. See, these are two different files. That 9.2 is a 9.4. This shows the one he showed me on the two. Yeah. Because that's what he wants. He didn't want this to be wrong. This is wrong. Yes, sir. Let me look at my thing. I'm married to an outline, unfortunately. I'm not one of these attorneys that can just go off the top of their head. 20 minutes.
So I should probably let the Barrett mean.
It's whichever, if we can fit one of them in,
Yeah.
whichever one you think shorter.
Maybe keep Delmarva, get done with it, even if we get done early.
You mean Davenport?
I mean,
I was going to say Delmarva, but uh-oh.
Delmarva's tomorrow morning.
Correct.
I want to get Revolution State done, so we can push for Hurricane tomorrow.
Works for me. Works for me.
They're cold. She can turn it down. There's the thermostat right there. She was at 69 or 67. She got down to 65.
That would be nice, you know.
Radiator.
Nice of you to tell us that. You can go if you want to take a seat. Seat's not, yeah. It's up to you.
I can pay for 5 minutes.
What are these documents you used?
Apple. They're all in.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called. Oh, that's how they were stamped, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I've got them
Did
ready.
you still want me to bring a printer and then print out? That's all I was trying to keep track of them. If you don't want me to do that, I don't want to keep track of them.
Yeah, we're probably going to need to print them out. I don't know if we'll need them, like, print them out here, but it would be good to have a printer downstairs in the war room to print stuff, I think.
I'll bring the printer.
Okay.
What I was telling you, Mark was having trouble seeing it.
Feeds live the entire time. Yeah. Damn thing's driving me nuts. I can't find the sensor. Be nice if they tell us.
Thanks for me.
They want me to watch your notes or something. Definitely can.
These icebreakers are these good ones.
just one. No.
Edith?
Mr. Strachan, before you there, you should see a document that is stickered with Exhibit 7. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen these 2 pages before that make up Exhibit 7?
Yes, sir, I have.
And what are these?
This is what we commonly refer to in housekeeping as the breakout. And the second page is actually a copy of the report that the supervisor would have knowing who was cleaning what room.
When you say the supervisor, is that the housekeeping
The
supervisor?
housekeeping floor supervisor, yes.
And would this have been a document that you would have reviewed during your time as a director of operations?
Typically, no, but in this instance, yes, when I was collecting information, this would have been a document that I would have collected for the investigation.
I'd like to admit this, Your Honor, as Exhibit number 7 and published to the jury. Good copy. I'm going to do it with Elmo over here. So this top page here is the breakout that you were talking about, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what that is essentially these ladies listed here under name are the housekeeping staff, correct?
Yes, this was a roster of the entire staff, and each day we would highlight who was working and who wasn't working for that particular day.
And what is the date of this particular breakout?
It's showing it was for Wednesday morning, September 3rd of 2008.
And this would have been the day that Miss Andrews checked in to the Vanderbilt Marriott, correct?
I would estimate so, yes, sir.
Now, turning to that second page that you mentioned, now this looks to be a printed report in which someone has made some handwritten notes on top of it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in the morning when this is printed, are any of these handwritten notes on it?
No, sir. When it's printed, it's a computer-generated document, so it won't have any handwriting.
I'm going to zoom in on towards the bottom here. And so you see the third column of data coming from the left. So if you look at the very last one, that may be the easiest one to start with. You have 1053. Is that the room number?
That is the room number, yes, sir.
And then we have NKNC. We've seen that before. That's a non-smoking king on the concierge floor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you have 2 letters, V and R. In the housekeeping, what does the letter V mean with regard to a room status?
That the room is vacant.
And what does R mean?
That it's ready.
And then if you look above the room that Miss Andrews checked in that day, you see an O. What does O mean?
It means occupied.
And R again would mean ready, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so what ready means is that room's ready for someone to be checked into it, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you look up just one more to 1049, you see OD. Now what is D?
That's dirty.
So this would be a room in which someone is occupied, someone's got a continuing reservation there, but it hadn't been freshened up for the day, so to speak.
Correct. We have not cleaned it yet.
And so this would have been printed on the morning of September 3rd, correct?
Yes, sir.
And handed to the housekeeping attendant who's assigned to these rooms, correct?
Just a point of clarification, it had been handed to the floor supervisor.
Okay. And whose handwriting is then on this document to the extent that you recognize it?
It appears to be my former assistant executive housekeeper.
And would that be Miss Janet?
No, sir.
Okay, who is Miss Janet?
Janet was the floor supervisor. This was her stack of room assignments for that particular morning.
So what are these handwritten indications on these next to various rooms indicate?
Typically, when we don't have a sold-out night, we'll have rooms that are still vacant from the previous evening, and so sometimes the housekeeper has to skip around. So that's a destination that apparently in this case looks like Lucilla was given some particular rooms on the 10th floor to clean. So that's why her name is written multiple times, because those that she was having to move around because the other rooms were already vacant and clean.
So with regard to 1049, the room that Mr. Barrett checked in the next day, it started out that morning as OD, and then Miss Lucilla notes it as OR, correct?
Janet would have noted it as OR, yes.
Okay. And by noting it as OR, it indicates that Lucilla had cleaned that room, correct?
She cleaned it as a stayover because the guest was still in the room.
If you will look down at 1053, back to that, we talked about VR. If we move to the right one more in this area here, what is that number 10392?
That number would correspond to the reservation number in our property management system and the PMS system.
So that would actually be somebody's reservation for that room, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so as of the morning of 9/3, 1053 is vacant, correct? There's nobody staying in there.
Correct. It was vacant from the night before.
Okay. But there's already someone assigned to that room to check in later that day, the 3rd of September.
Yes, sir.
Now, so this report is run at the beginning of the day. Is there a report that's run at the end of the day that shows you what your occupancy for that night is?
I believe so, yes. There was a report in the property management system that would allow us to print up the occupancy for the day, yes.
I have here, Your Honor, what I'd like to mark as Exhibit 8 for identification.
Is that for me, Your Honor? Is it for me? Okay, thank you.
And so, have you seen the document that I've marked as Exhibit number 8?
I don't recall seeing it before, but I'm familiar with it, yes, sir.
What is this document?
It's an occupancy report, which shows, in this case, it shows everybody that was occupying a room, starting with room 1028 all the way to 1155.
And this would have been for the evening of September 3rd, 2008, correct?
Correct. It's time-stamped 23/29/28, which is 11:29 p.m.
And would this be a report that was run during the night audit process?
Because the timestamp, yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd move for this to be the next exhibit. Published to the jury. Now, before I do that, so the folio here, before, no one's checked into 1053, but we have a reservation number of 10392 set to check in later that day, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so does that indicate to you that whoever that guest is that's assigned to that folio number was pre-blocked into that room?
Yes, sir. He was pre-blocked in that room.
And so if we look at the occupancy report from that night, and we look at 1053, the reservation number for that, again, is 10392, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we had 10392 for 1053 in a vacant room, pre-blocked to set in there. And then that night, or sometime during that day, but by that night when this report is run, that individual with that reservation number has checked into the room that he was pre-blocked, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now going back to Exhibit 7. Now Mr. Barrett checked in to 1049, correct?
Yes, sir.
What's the room type for 1049 noted on this report that was printed on September 3rd, 2008?
It shows it's a non-smoking room with 2 double beds on the concierge level.
Having reviewed this document, does that refresh your recollection as to what room type 1049 was?
Yes, sir. It's 2 double beds.
And again, going back, Mr. Barrett had been guaranteed a king, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the front desk would not have pre-blocked him with a guaranteed king on the concierge floor in a room with 2 double queen beds, correct?
That is correct. They would not have.
Now, on September 4th, this document here, let me back up, don't get ahead of myself. This document doesn't just cover the 3rd, correct?
No, sir. In fact, because we told it we wanted to look for today, it started with the today, but we could actually go 51 weeks ahead. We just keep scrolling further and further ahead and see what's blocked in the future.
So when this document, without the handwriting on it, was printed on the morning of the 3rd, it already showed who you had coming in the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so we know, we just got done talking about, in 1053, you already had that individual pre-blocked in there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Miss Andrews is already pre-blocked and is already in her room in 1051, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Barrett didn't check in until 9/4, correct?
Correct.
So there's an individual that's in that room on the 3rd, correct?
Correct.
And we know that because there's a reservation number associated with 1049, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a reservation number associated for the 4th?
No, sir.
So as of the 3rd, the morning of the 3rd, no one has been pre-assigned or pre-blocked into 1049, correct?
Correct. No, sir.
And that would include Mr. Barrett, correct?
Correct.
I have here, Your Honor, what I'd like to mark as Exhibit 9. Have you seen this document, Mr. Strachan, that I've marked as Exhibit 9?
Yes, sir.
And does this appear to be a similar document to what we had marked and just got done discussing with Exhibit 8?
Yes, sir.
Is it just for the next day, for the 4th of September?
It is next day report. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd like to admit this as the next exhibit. Number 9. So we have here the breakout, as you called it, for that Thursday, September 4th, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's just showing who's assigned to where for purposes of that morning's cleaning, correct?
Correct.
If we were to turn to the second page, you've got a similar printout to what we did on the 3rd, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if we look down at 1053, we still got the individual with the folio number 10392, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
If we look at 1049, maybe a little difficult, but does that look like the original printout was a VD?
Yes, sir, it appears to say vacant dirty.
Okay. So the individual that had been checked into this room, who was not Mr. Barrett on the 3rd, has checked out.
Yes, sir.
And he's checked out and the room's been marked vacant at the time that this form was printed, correct?
Yes, sir, correct.
And this form would have been printed in the morning before housekeeping starts their work for the day.
Yes, sir.
Because this is how they know where they've got to go to clean. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So at the time that this was printed, the individual that had been in what was to become Mr. Barrett's room the next day had already checked out, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, there's a handwritten note next to that that says VR. What does that mean?
That would be after the floor supervisor checked the room, she would flip it over to vacant ready.
Now, when a room on a book night, such as the 4th, y'all were sold out that night, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
If you've got a vacant, dirty room in the morning, is that a priority for housekeeping?
That is a priority for housekeeping.
And so that would have been one of the first rooms that one of the more senior housekeepers, since this is a concierge floor, would have gone to clean, correct?
Yes, sir.
As of the morning of 9/4, the very morning that Mr. Barrett is going to check into this hotel, is there a folio number, a reservation number associated with 1049?
No, sir.
Does this indicate to you, based on your experience and knowledge as Director of Operations, as being previously the Executive Housekeeper, and your 25 years of experience in the hotel industry, that Mr. Barrett was not pre-blocked into 1049?
This evidence that he was not pre-blocked in 1049 at the time of this report.
So as of the morning of 9/4/2008, hours before Mr. Barrett was to check in, he had not been assigned the room next to Miss Andrews, correct?
That is correct.
Now we just went over that he was, or the hotel in fact was that night, the 4th, sold out, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Mr. Kennard asked you if you knew how many rooms he had been blocked and volunteered that it was 60. Assuming it was 60, that's a large block of rooms, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then y'all, it's a Thursday, so you still have your normal business travelers coming in, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in a situation like that, where you have a large group, you have a lot of business travelers coming in, you have an upscale clientele, is it fair to say that the concierge floors would have been also sold out?
Yes, sir.
And they would have been at a premium, wouldn't they?
Yes, sir.
And so it would have been important to ensure that individuals, especially reward members, who had a concierge reservation, got the room type that they were guaranteed, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Barrett was guaranteed a king. We've gone over that number numerous times, correct?
Yes, sir.
1049, based on the documents you just saw, was a double queen room, correct?
Double room, yes, sir.
Okay. And as of that morning, he had not been assigned to that room, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
So in a hotel that was booked with limited availability on the concierge floor, with reward members that are requesting guaranteed rooms, is it likely that Mr. Barrett would have been pre-blocked into a room that fit his guarantee?
Yes, sir. If he was guaranteed a king-size bed, he would have been blocked in a king-size room.
Is it likely likely that Mr. Barrett would have been pre-blocked into a room that fit his guarantee?
Yes, sir. If he was guaranteed a king-size bed, he would have been blocked in a king-size room.
And could that be the explanation for why there is the notation on line 18 of both of his folios, do not move?
That could be the explanation why it says do not move. Yes, sir.
And we've gone through these housekeeping records where you have on the 4th numerous individuals with folio numbers associated with rooms, correct?
Yes, sir.
And for those individuals with a folio number associated with a room that hadn't checked in yet, that indicates that they've been pre-blocked into that room, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so it's very likely, more than likely, that Mr. Barrett was pre-blocked into a king concierge room.
Yes, sir.
And that would not have been the room next to Erin.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that my understanding of your testimony is clear. If Mr. Barrett says he couldn't remember how he got to the 10th floor, does that mean that the front desk wouldn't have offered him a concierge key since he had a concierge reservation?
Not necessarily. We might have volunteered to allow him access to the concierge lounge.
Is it possible he could have gotten on an elevator with an individual and simply got off on the 10th floor with that individual?
That is a possibility. Yes, sir.
On a game day morning where people are checking out, you've got a large group of South Carolina fans coming in for the college football kickoff. Is it reasonable to conclude that the lobby would have been a bit chaotic?
The lobby would have been busy. Yes, sir.
And if the lobby's busy, the elevators could be pretty busy?
Yes, sir.
And so an individual such as Mr. Barrett, who's devised a plan, come up with a plan, is executing that plan, he could have simply hopped on the elevator with all the South Carolina fans and waited until one got off on the 10th floor.
That is a possibility. Yes, sir.
Now, you were shown a bunch of statements on slides by Mr. Kennard. And I can't remember them all. There are too many. Seem to say all the same things, but I just can't remember them all. Now, one of them, I believe, said, and if I'm wrong, I know Mr. Kennard will correct me, that we should always take account of safety of our guests before giving someone a favor. Now, he couched that as a term, as a standard in the industry. My question to you is that a standard or is that a goal?
Our goal is always to provide safety and security of all of our guests. We could put a camera in front of every guest room. We could have security officers roaming every single floor, but that's not the standard for the industry.
So the goal is to provide safety, correct?
For every guest, yes, sir.
And the standard is reasonable care.
Yes, sir.
And so one of the slides went to the effect of complete safety of our guests. Well, that's an aspiration of every hotel, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the standard, as you've practiced for over 25 years in this industry, is reasonable care, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Now you were at Vanderbilt Marriott for 5 years?
Just under 5 years, yes, sir.
Based on your 5 years of experience there and your 25 years of experience in the industry, do you believe that there was a need for additional security at that property?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any significant criminal activity that has occurred on the property or in the property?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any significant criminal activity that had occurred before 2008 in the neighboring area, the immediate vicinity of the hotel?
Other than a bank robbery, no, sir.
And in that bank robbery, that individual actually ran into y'all's hotel, didn't he?
Correct, he did. And at that point, we did a lockdown.
And he tried to flush money down the toilet.
Yes, he did.
And before y'all knew it, you had cops everywhere, right?
Yes, we did.
And in response to that, y'all shut down the hotel.
Yes, we did.
And your first concern in that situation was the safety of your guests.
Of our guests and our employees, everybody in the building.
Other than that robbery that occurred outside the hotel, are you aware of any other major crime that occurred during your 5 years there in the immediate area of West End?
No, sir.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Did you meet with the defense lawyers recently?
I did meet with them last week, yes, sir.
Last week, did you go to their office?
No, sir, they came to my hotel.
They came to your hotel?
Yes, sir.
How long did you all meet?
Approximately an hour and a half.
Did you go over these documents that you all been talking about?
We went over some of the documents, yes, sir, not all the documents.
Okay. And you haven't met with me or anybody on this side?
Not other than during the deposition, no, sir.
Well, there were questions asked at a deposition, which is sworn testimony, where lawyers asked you questions, and everybody was there. All the lawyers representing all the parties were there.
Yes, sir.
But you met with the defense lawyers without us being present, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, on this form where it says A1, that means adjoining.
An adjoining request, yes, sir.
And C1
Is a connecting room request, yes.
That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Strachan, prior to today, in preparation for your testimony today, did you receive a care package from Mr. Kennard?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what did he provide you?
It was a copy of my deposition that I did with them a year ago, with the lawyers a year ago.
Did he provide you any depositions that were taken after that?
No, sir.
Did we provide you with depositions that were taken after that?
He provided me with a few, yes, sir.
Did you have an opportunity outside of our presence to read those depositions?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you look at the documents that we provided to you outside of our presence?
No, sir, other than the copies of the depositions, no, sir.
The deposition testimony that you gave a year ago, do you feel like you had a complete picture of what had occurred?
No, sir. The information that I shared during the deposition was information that was based on the documents that we had and conjecture.
And whose conjecture?
At mine and Brian Chakowski's.
And based on the documents that you pulled in September of 2009, I'll withdraw that question. Having reviewed the deposition testimony and the documents we discussed today, do you feel like you have a complete picture of what occurred?
I have a better understanding of what occurred, yes, sir.
And is it based on that, is it your understanding that Mr. Barrett ended up in 1049 because of a request to be put next to Erin Andrews?
Not necessarily that. Based on the information that I read, it appeared that he worked the system and found a room that just happened to be vacant right next door to her and requested if he could be checked into that room because it was an early request.
And that's information that you didn't have at the time of your deposition?
No, sir, I did not have the information at the time of deposition.
And that's information that you and Mr. Chakowski did not have when you were discussing with the FBI?
That is correct.
Is that information you believe Mr. Chakowski would have liked to have known?
Yes, I think he would have felt like it was exonerated us from the fact that we did something wrong.
Thank you. That's all I know.
Doing okay?
I'm doing okay. Just I was close to Brian Chakowski, and it's a shame that he's not here to be in court.
Where did this extra information come from? So from the defense lawyer providing you extra information?
The information, when I met with the defense lawyers, they shared with me some information that was provided on other depositions that I wasn't aware of.
Are you talking about Mr. Barrett?
Mr. Barrett's deposition, yes, sir, and also a Jacqueline DeMint's deposition.
And they told you what Barrett said, or showed you the deposition. Is that what they showed you?
They let me read the deposition from Mr. Barrett, yes, sir.
And you understand he's a convicted felon, right?
I understand that, yes, sir.
That's all.
Thank you, sir. Do you want the exhibit, sir? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
One of the jurors has notified the court that they have to leave enough time to pick up the child at 5 o'clock. So your next witness?
I think that'll work, Your Honor. I agree. Mr. David Davenport?
Okay.
I can grab it.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, put your stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Davenport.
Afternoon.
You were an employee of the Nashville Marriott back in 2008, correct?
Yes.
You were with the Nashville Marriott for about 10 years,
Yes, sir.
and you were one of the people who was one of the higher-ups in maintenance at the Nashville Marriott, correct?
Yes.
When did you start and when did you finish your tenure at the Nashville Marriott?
I believe it was 1999 till 2010.
Okay. So you were pretty familiar with the Marriott, the layout, the technical things on the premises, like how elevators work, how phones work, and so forth, correct?
Yes.
Let's talk first about the phone system. The house phones at the Nashville Marriott at the time did not have an LCD screen that would reveal the name or telephone number of the person on the phone, correct?
The house phones did not.
Okay. There were certain phones that did,
Yes.
but they were restricted to employee use, correct?
Yes.
And employees were not permitted to allow house guests to use those phones, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in evidence. Go ahead. Overrule.
Was one of the reasons that the house phones were not to be used, was one of the reasons that the employee phones were not to be used by guests is that y'all did not want the guests to see the number of the guests that they called?
Yes.
And was that a safety issue?
Yes.
Was that a privacy issue?
Privacy issue, yes.
And did you all know that at the Nashville Marriott before September of 2008?
Yes.
Now, one reason that you know some of these things is that you were involved in servicing these phones, correct?
As far as replacement only.
Okay. So there were house phones that if somebody says they used a house phone, they would go up to the house phone, pick it up, and the house phone would take them directly to the operator, correct?
Yes.
And these are the phones without the LCD display, right?
Right.
When they call the operator, or I should say when they pick up the house phone and are automatically connected to the operator, they can then ask for somebody's room by their name, correct?
Yes.
And then if they get connected to that room, they get the connection to the room, but they don't learn what the room number is, correct?
Yes.
And it was all designed that way on purpose, for purposes of safety, correct?
Safety and privacy.
And for privacy, right?
Yes.
Now, in certain locations, in the restaurant, in the bar, at the front desk, back in the employee facilities, where these phones were that did have an LCD display, those were under the control and observation of employees, correct?
Yes.
And the employee was not supposed to let a non-employee use one of those phones, am I right?
Right.
And they were positioned in places, like let's say in the bar, where it was away from the place where people would belly up to the bar. So
Right.
to say.
Yeah.
And it was like on the opposite counter to make sure that somebody at the bar could not use the phone, correct?
I don't exactly remember, but it should have been set up similar to that, yes.
Oh, it should have been set up similar to that, right?
Yes, I say that because I don't remember exactly.
Gotcha. But what we do know is that according to the standards, back September 2008 and before, if there's going to be a phone with an LCD display on it, it should be located somewhere where customers can't get to it, right?
Yes.
And by customers, I include hotel guests. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. Secondary. Cameras. Where were the cameras, the security cameras, located back in August and September of 2008?
The only camera I can tell you I remember for sure is the employee entrance camera. I couldn't tell you other than that.
All right. If you assume for me that there was a camera at the front desk, that there was a camera, well, let me back up a second. Were there any security cameras at all on the floors above the first floor?
I don't remember.
You don't recall any security cameras on the floors where people stayed in rooms, am I right?
Right.
And you recognize back then that one of the reasons for security cameras was to see what's going on, right?
Right.
But another reason was so that somebody who wanted to do something might be deterred from doing it because they know there's a security camera there, right?
Yes.
So security cameras provided the double function of actually seeing if somebody does something they shouldn't be doing, but also of discouraging them from doing it in the first place, right?
I would assume that, yes.
Did you ever do repairs on any of the security cameras?
No.
Okay. Now let's talk for a moment about the concierge floor, just to make sure that we're on all fours on that. The concierge floors back then were floors 10 and 11, correct?
Yes.
And what it means when we talk concierge floor is that the amenities are a little greater on that floor. There's a lounge with food at certain times of the day. The appointments in the rooms themselves might be a little nicer, and you pay for it, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things about a concierge floor is that they are set up to limit the number of people that can go onto those floors, correct?
Yes.
In order to get onto a concierge floor, you have to have a key, and you have to use that key and press the button for the concierge floor, or put the key in a slot, something like that, right?
Yes.
And so what that does is it makes it difficult for somebody without a key to get to the concierge floor, correct?
Difficult, yes.
And that significantly also had to do with safety and privacy, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you know how there's a staircase that goes from the top floor all the way down to the bottom?
Yes.
And you know how there's doors to enter and exit from the staircase?
Yes.
On the concierge floors, you were able to leave the concierge floor through one of those doors, but once it closed behind you, you could not get back in, correct?
Yes.
And the reason that those doors coming down by the concierge floor were one-way doors, that you could only leave the concierge floor, but you couldn't get into it that way, was for safety, correct?
Yes.
And for privacy.
Yes.
In fact, you all recognized back then that when somebody checks into the hotel and goes into their room and closes the door and does that little latch thing, almost like a deadbolt kind of concept, you all recognize that for that guest, you wanted it to be like their home away from home, right?
Yes.
So the home away from home carried with it the idea of security, correct?
Yes.
And it also carried with it the idea of protecting privacy, right?
Yes.
And one of the things you all talked about back then before September of 2008 was that one of the things that this safety issue was about was avoiding someone fraudulently getting into someone else's room, right?
Yes.
Did we send you a copy of your deposition to read over?
Yes, you did. I got it last night.
And at your deposition, just so everyone knows what a deposition is, you were in a room and lawyers for all the parties were there, and they each could ask you questions, and there was a court reporter just like this there, and you were under oath, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then it got transcribed into a booklet form that becomes your deposition. It's a Q&A. Question answer, right?
Yes.
And at your deposition, you're the one that volunteered to us that the reason we approach.
Well, first off, you have to ask him a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apologize.
You can't read or quote the deposition unless he gives a different answer.
Sure. We have here a rough drawing, a representation of the 10th floor on the blow-up there. Do you see that?
Yes.
Were all the floors the same?
Floors 4 through 11, if I remember right, were the same, identical.
Okay. So floors 4 through 11 had the same sort of layout with the alcoves?
Yes.
And so the ones below 10, floors 9, 8, 7, down to I guess 4 or 5, all of them had the same layout. They didn't have the benefit of the security provided by being on a concierge floor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So going back to that security and privacy question, if I may approach your own stage. One of the things that you all knew was critically important to safety was the peephole in the door, right?
Yes.
Have you been working long enough to remember the days before peepholes?
No.
Do you recognize from your knowledge in the field that the problem with not having a peephole is that if somebody knocks and you open the door, you don't know who it is out in that hallway, right?
Right.
Okay. So you recognize back when you were doing your work and you would talk about it at the hotel that the peephole was a safety device, correct?
Yes.
So I'm going to approach up here. I'm anything but an artist. Okay?
Okay.
I'm going to give it my best shot. It will be very simple. If we have here a side view look at a door. And so here is the inside of the room. Got me?
Yes.
This is like a cross-section of the door. It's like I'm the door here. And I open, okay?
Yes.
And then here's the hallway. The way the peephole worked was it allowed the person inside, if there's a knock at the door or ring of the bell, to go up and look through the peephole and see who was out there, correct?
Yes.
And in that sense, it was a safety device because it avoided the danger of just opening the door when somebody knocks, correct?
Yes.
Then, the way it was set up, since you looked at these things, is the outer lens was like a bowl, correct?
Right.
And the reason it was like a bowl, for any of us that have looked inside a peephole, looked out to who was out there, is by having it as a big bowl, you can look through the peephole and see a wide view. It's not just the peephole view. Got me?
Yes.
Okay. But the second part of this that was a protection of privacy is that if you were on the outside and you tried to look in, that bowl would make anything inside look so small that you couldn't really see what it was, right?
Right.
And you know that because sometimes peepholes would get damaged and you'd have to replace something or you'd have to look and see if people could see through it and so forth, right?
Yes.
So, one thing that you realize back then is that if the peephole was not kept really, really tight, somebody in the hallway could unscrew it and remove it, right?
Yes.
And you all could foresee back then that if it wasn't kept tight, somebody with bad intentions could come up and get that thing undone, correct?
Yes.
And you all talked about the fact that that would be dangerous and could be a violation of somebody's privacy, right?
You say talked about. Could you give me a little better idea of exactly what you mean by we talked about?
Let me put it this way. You had people that were under you, correct?
Yes.
People you supervised, right?
Yes.
And you told them that peephole has to be really tight to make sure that nobody opens up that safety device, right?
Yes.
And one reason that was important is this ball, this globe here of the lens on the outside, that meant that if you look through this hole, you could barely tell what was on the inside.
if you could remove that bulb, that lens, then you'd have a nice clean view to what was inside, right?
Yes.
So this is far enough back that you all could foresee that somebody might try to take a peephole that wasn't tight enough off the door and look inside. It was far enough back that you even had it on a checklist in 2005, correct?
Yes.
It was known to the whole hotel that it was critically important.
Speculation.
Well, I'll rephrase. This was a hotel required inspection even back in 2005, correct?
Yes.
And so what would happen was every 3 months y'all were supposed to check a variety of things in each room, and one of them was how secure the peephole was, right?
Yes.
Because you all knew that that little peephole was potential exposure of somebody's privacy when they were in their home away from home, right?
Yes.
And so, we're not putting the form up for now. The form has a variety of things you're supposed to check, or that whoever the worker was supposed to check, to make sure that peephole is tight. And one of the things to check is secure peephole, right?
Yes.
And the term that was used on your form at the Nashville Marriott was not viewport, it was peephole, right?
I think it was peep sight, but yes.
Well, you know what then, let's put it up. Could you please put up for me on the screen Exhibit 66? And if you go to page 12, go to this and let's highlight the date up toward the top there. And you see there it says a series of dates, all of them in 2005. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So now what I'd like to do is at the top it says guest problem tracking under name. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then it says discipline, engineering, preventive maintenance. Do you see that?
Yes.
And that's what you were doing, correct?
I was responsible for seeing to it was done.
All right. And some of the things on preventive maintenance have to do with whether there's a leak in the shower or whether there's a broken piece of tile or something like that, right?
Yes.
But some of them had to do with safety, security, and privacy, right?
Yes.
So let's go to the third page of this. Of this Exhibit 66, Your Honor. And so now we see that form that goes all the way back to at least 2005. Did it go back to earlier than 2005? Or if you don't remember, that's okay.
I don't remember.
All right. So if we can just kind of bring the whole thing a little bit bigger there. Okay, so what we're showing there is, it says guest room preventive maintenance checklist. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you see under the category of entries, you can highlight that area.
Yes.
Okay. So you see, with regard to the entry, the checkmark things are welcome light, entry and connecting doors. You see that?
Yes.
Night flash well and door. What is that for?
That's the latch you mentioned earlier.
That's the latch, so that was the safety one, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then it says peephole secure. right?
Yes.
So that we understand how this works, the peephole has a male part and a female part, correct?
Yes.
If I can go back up to my drawing here again. Would the male part be the part that has the dome?
No.
The male part would be the inside.
Yes. Yes.
So, we have the female part here. We have the dome and the sleeve that is the female part, correct?
Yes.
And that has grooves inside of it?
Yes.
And then on the opposite side is the male part that slides into that sleeve and gets tightened down, correct?
Yes.
And the way it gets tightened down is a screwdriver on the inside, right?
Yes.
On the inside, there is purchase for, or the ability to use, the blade of a screwdriver and to turn it into that female end, correct?
Yes.
And so you put the blade in there on the inside where somebody's in their home away from home, and you tighten and you're supposed to make it as tight as you can, right?
Yes.
So that it becomes really challenging to remove it from the outside, correct?
Yes.
And if it loosens over the course of time, it becomes easier and easier to unscrew it from the outside, right?
Yes.
Do you know when the last time that the peephole on room 1051 was actually tightened?
No.
Before September 4 of 2008?
No.
Did you ever go back and try to find any records?
No. Not that I remember.
One more thing. Well, before I say one more thing, Your Honor, let me take a look at my notes. Famous last words by a lawyer, I know. Just give me a second. Okay. Did you all, were you supposed to be having 15-minute, excuse me, yes, 15-minute safety meetings periodically at the National Marriott?
I don't remember.
Do you remember
sure I did.
having any safety meetings at all?
Yes.
When you would have those, will records and documentation be kept of those safety meetings?
I don't remember.
Did you ever go back to look and see if there's a single document that confirms having one of those safety meetings?
Not that I remember.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Davenport.
Counsel asked you a number of questions about safety on the concierge floor. Were you aware that Michael Barrett had a reservation for a concierge level room?
No.
Is the concierge, you don't run the concierge floor when you were at Vandy Marriott, did you?
No.
You didn't design the concierge floor?
No.
You didn't design the concierge floor layout?
No.
You didn't do any of the marketing for the concierge floor?
No.
Was the concierge floor, in your estimation, a fortress or a club?
In my opinion,
Yes, sir.
more of a club, the higher end client.
So if you were a member of the club, you should be allowed in, right?
Yes.
And so if you were a concierge member, someone who was entitled to come to the concierge floor, whether you could get in a door, out a door, up an elevator, didn't matter. You were a member of that club, right?
If you were staying on those floors, yes.
There's a lot of questions about the phones. Do you know, as you sit here today, what type of phone was sitting at the hostess stand of the restaurant?
To the best of my memory, it was an LCD phone.
So if you picked it up and said, hey, I need Mrs. Smith's room, and they transfer you Mrs. Smith's room, you're going to be able to see what that room number is on that phone, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever recommend to anybody at the Vanderbilt Marriott to put security cameras on guest floors?
No.
You were asked a lot of questions very early on in your direct about standards. Are you familiar, and counsel showed you some standard operating procedures that come from Marriott International. You recall those?
Vaguely.
Okay. And then there were some local standard operating procedures, correct? Do you recall the SOPs?
I'm sure there were. I don't remember.
You don't remember what standards were applicable at the Vandy Marriott, do you?
I left the Marriott in 2010, and I never looked back.
So when counsel's asking you about what the standards were, you don't know what he's talking about, do you?
A general idea, yes.
But you can't point me to any standard that you're relying upon.
No, sir.
And the only standards that you can possibly recall here today are Marriott International standards, correct?
I couldn't even tell you any of those for sure.
That's all I have. Thank you, Erin.
Just briefly, counsel asked you whether you knew about whether Mr. Barrett had got himself a room on the concierge floor. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Did you know that Mr. Barrett had called in requesting a room next to Erin Andrews according to the documents that the jury had seen? Did you know that?
No.
Did you know that on those documents, above the words "do not move," are the letters C1 and A1, which means connecting or adjoining? Did you know that?
No.
Did you know that connecting or adjoining was one of his special requests?
No.
Did you know that in order to connect or join, that the front desk needs to know who he wants to be connected or adjoined to?
No.
One more thing. I know we talked some about the concierge floor, but the form that I put up there wasn't just about the concierge floor, was it?
No.
Every single room in that hotel, whether it was concierge floor, which is more expensive, or maybe the rooms that the rest of us stay, from top to bottom, what I asked you about the peephole applies to every single one of them, right?
Yes, sir.
And every single one of us that goes into one of these hotels, rephrase, every one of us that goes into the National Marriott that day, whether alone, with our spouse, or with our children, when we close the door and lock it, and are in that room, every one of us was entitled to know that peephole was secure, right?
Yes.
Nothing further.
I apologize for that for it. There's just a couple of things I got to clear up. Have you ever worked at a front desk at a hotel?
No, sir.
Do you have any knowledge about what the property management system was at the Vanderbilt Marriott?
No.
Do you have any idea how reservations work?
No.
Do you have any idea how Marriott International, big Marriott, communicates information through various computer systems to Vanderbilt Marriott?
No.
You've been showed and you've been asked numerous questions about preventative maintenance and peephole secure. Is it your testimony here to the jury today that your department didn't do those checklists?
We did those checklists.
And so if there was a peephole that was loose, broken, needed some attention, y'all gave it that attention, correct?
Yes.
And so you don't want to leave with the jury today thinking that you, as second in command of the engineering department of the hotel, simply didn't do what you were required to do, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
But did you ever go back and try to find the records of that?
The records of?
Of check markings securing peephole. Did you ever go back and look for documentation that you actually were sure that one was tight?
At random?
The one in 1051. Did you ever do that?
I randomly checked what my guys were taking care of, and I actually randomly went to the rooms behind these guys to make sure that they were doing their jobs properly. To give you an exact number?
Not my question. My question is this. Did you ever go back trying to find the actual documentation of filling out these forms and signing off on them?
No.
Yes, Father Erin. You may shut down. Sit down, report.
Thank you.
Tomorrow. All right, we'll start again tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I will see you guys tomorrow. Just a minute before I leave. This case is a lot of unusual questions arise, one of which was the news media, I guess perhaps on behalf of all of them, has requested to copy the exhibits. And I've never had that come up before, but my answer to that would be off the cuff no, because they become part of the case and it's almost sanctified. It can't be published on the news media. I just suspect it's doing it so they can the specific one I mentioned, the hallway video of the hallway videos. If you want to give them, that's kind of harmless. That's up to you.
Or they can do that themselves, Your Honor. Yeah. We get to go over and just do that.
Yeah, Commissioner, to go to do it themselves.
I'm unsure what's the
Just a video of the hallway.
The news was hallway video.
Oh, I see.
It's new video that actually has that. Who did that? Who asked that question? Okay. Anyway, whoever asked it, they're welcome to go to apparently.
Yeah, and Washington was also took the video and he was inside the room as well. That was some people
I think we can get them a copy, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, if we may, can the attorney see you in chamber?